Hello and welcome to the BVB update for September 29th. I'm Stefan Butzko and in this format I cover Borussia Dortmund news and other shenanigans. And yes, I'm back after taking a bit of a breather because of the international break, being pretty much the only chance where I can do that, considering Borussia Dortmund will play 13 games in about 42 days. Starting with Saturday's match against 1. FC Köln, and a lot of work, a lot of content ahead of me with a lot of yellow wallpots and whatnot. So first of all, check out yesterday's episode that I did together with Matthias Zug to preview the Cologne game, but also review the Revier Derby. Certainly a lot of fun, and of course there are injury updates to get to, and a little bit of I don't know if it's going to be a rant, but Gio Reyna's injury certainly not well received on my end. I guess we will start with the quotes from today's news conference and what Edin Terzic said today. And let's start with the injury update because he did say, quote, Gio Reyna suffered a muscular strain while playing for the United States last Tuesday. He will be out for 7 to 10 days. We hope that he's ready to return after the Sevilla game. Where I asked which one, because Dortmund do play them twice within the space of 1 week. But I assume it's the former, so that would be good news because that would mean that Gio Reyna could return as soon as the game against Bayern Munich. But obviously, I don't think he would be ready to play full 90 minutes. And regarding Marco Reus, Edin Terzic was also very positive. He said, quote, it's not as bad as we feared. There's hope that he will re-enter team training after this weekend so that he can rebuild his fitness and will be available for ensuing games. So not entirely sure when Marco Reus will be returning, but apparently sooner than thought. And also Gregor Kobel will be out against 1. FC Köln, and I think we were all very hopeful and optimistic that he would be able to play. But there Terzic said, quote, he is not fit for the match against Cologne, but we are hopeful that he will be ready before Wednesday's game against Sevilla. Unfortunately, it could take a few extra days because he's now also dealing with a back injury, which he needs to recover from first. And regarding Charlie Özcan, who also was not on international duty, and their reports were that he has suffered a bone marrow edema, there Terzic said that Charlie Özcan needed to rest his foot so he couldn't attend the games with Turkey. He trained individually yesterday. We hope that he re-enters team training today and then takes part in tomorrow's final team training so that he can play on Saturday. And then Terzic said everyone else is fit to play. Obviously, you all saw that Julian Brandt, Youssoufa, Moukoko and Thorgan left their national teams prematurely. However, they all trained yesterday. It's looking good. And of course, Terzic was asked about how he would replace Marco Reus. Obviously, Gio Reyna now also being out. But he still said, quote, we can replace him like for like, or we could switch to a system where we don't play with a clear number 10. Against Manchester City, Reus played on the wing because we wanted to congest the center with 3 defensive midfielders. These are all alternatives that we are pondering. We will see what suits us best and what we think will work best against Cologne on Saturday. And he was also asked about Anthony Modeste, where he said, quote, we had an excellent international break. We initially reduced the intensity, but had some fantastic training sessions in the recent days. Anthony Modeste is obviously frustrated that his scoring output isn't where he wants it to be, but he's doing really well in training, and I can see that he is on a good path to where he needs to be. And he also was asked about Adeyemi and Malen because they also stayed in Dortmund. There he said, quote, they've used the international break to rebuild some fitness after their injuries, but it's also very clear that they won't be able to play 4 games in a row now. And about Saturday's opponent, 1. FC Köln, Terzic said, quote, they are playing what I call all-in football. No matter who plays, they play a very confident, risk-seeking style. They haven't changed much compared to last season, even though they lost 2 starters. Whoopsie. They are still very dangerous on set pieces, and they create many of their set pieces situations by spamming crosses into the box, either from the wings or from half field. So basically that means avoid conceding corner kicks, but probably not easy to avoid. I assume this will be a theme on Saturday. And of course, a lookout by Terzic on playing 13 games in 42 days. And there he said, quote, we made sure to lay a foundation for this training season during our summer preparations. We just took a bit of a breather during the international break. In the games ahead, we will have to heavily rotate, manage the load. Rotation will be an issue, however, due to all the injuries that we already are dealing with. And if you look at the players on international duty who did not get a break, it is critical that you manage their strain as well. And in that regard, I really do wonder how many minutes Julian Brandt now has to play due to the injuries of Gio Reyna and Marco Reus. And obviously the news of Gio Reyna was not well received among the Bundesliga community because, as Manuel Fitz says here, that Reyna stressed that BVB and the United States men's national team coaching staff will be in close contact over his playing time during the international break. With that in mind, it baffles the mind that he started both the games for the United States. Yeah, obviously he played 45 minutes against Japan and then had to come off after playing 30 minutes against Saudi Arabia. And Manu writes here, I will have more to say on the gegenpressing pod, but it feels very irresponsible toward a 19-year-old not to give him the time during the international break to fully work on his fitness. BVB are now paying the price in what is an important stretch for the club. And Derek Ray, of course, a Bundesliga commentator, says, with Gio Reyna now set to miss 7 to 10 days and 3 big games for BVB after the international team period, it is legitimate to debate and discuss whether he should have been called up by the United States men's national team. Absolutely, they're right, of course, but BVB have been very careful with him for obvious reasons. And then Derek here continues, honestly, I think we can extend this debate to scores of players who will undergo risks for the sake of the Qatar World Cup. Unfortunately, everyone wants their piece of the players, up to advisors and FIFPro, etc., to look at longer term health. And as Derek here points out, everyone has selfish interests. If you're a fan of the national team, you might think that is all that matters in a World Cup year. A Dortmund fan and Borussia Dortmund who pay/employ him will see it differently, and the United States stuff is secondary. Main point is long career ahead, hopefully. And yeah, this is my main gripe with this whole situation. On the one hand, you can understand why the United States would call him up because A, he hasn't played for them in months, and B, it was the last opportunity to have any sort of team chemistry built, I guess, ahead of the World Cup. Now, if you've seen the United States play this international break, I can say it, they suck. They're terrible, and there's a lot of gelling to do. And unfortunately, I think the most important partnership that Gio Reyna potentially would have is with Pifok, but he wasn't even called up, so you can just see all the blunders they're making over there with the United States national team. Now, I did appreciate it that the camp was set up in Germany and Spain, so these players did not have to travel across the pond to play games over there. But nevertheless, I think if you look at the history of Gio Reyna's injury record, and you will see that he was basically out for the entire last season with muscular problems that started with the United States international duty, I'm afraid to say. And then, of course, Dortmund have been super careful. They have really almost put him in bubble wrap. He had one start against Manchester City in the Champions League, but even there, he played, I think, 70 or 60 minutes or so, and he has not played over the whole game yet. No 90 minutes. Even in the derby, when he was subbed in for Marco Reus, he was subbed off before full time. So that really tells you how careful Dortmund were, and to then see him leave for international duty and pick up an injury and then miss key games when your team captain, who is playing in that position, is already out. It's just really annoying and vexing, and to me it's a bit of a head scratcher, also in the context of Dortmund having to play, or pretty much every team that has European football having to play 13 games or 12 games in like 40 to 45 days, depending on the schedule. Bayer Leverkusen, for example, have one less game because they're also already out of the German Cup. But nevertheless, the overall point is that Gio Reyna probably should not have been called up, but used this international break for a different kind of conditioning, a different kind of strain on his body. And then I think Dortmund still would have been very careful in the next games ahead against, of course, Köln, but then you play against Sevilla, then you play against Bayern, then Sevilla again, and then Union Berlin. So these next 5 games already are extremely crucial for Dortmund. So in that context, from a Dortmund perspective, it is absolutely unnecessary for him to pick up an injury. Now, that being said, of course, he could have picked up an injury playing a 30-minute stint for against 1. Köln. And, then you also would be upset. But either way, it is just a very sad situation. And I feel like this is going to be a theme that will continue this season because of the strain. I think it's pretty unprecedented, to be honest. And as Derek Ray said, really, yeah, it's like a war of attrition almost for these players now that have to play, I don't know how many games now. I don't know how the rotational load management will be, but I'm pretty sure, you know, it will just be a downward spiral because player X gets injured and player Y has to play more due to player X being injured, and player Y also picks up an injury because of all the strain. And I feel like this is going to continue now, and yeah, just goes to show how shitty it is to schedule a World Cup like this. And yeah, the European leagues and their league schedules are now entirely screwed. You know, that's how it is. So yeah, I will be back with the predicted lineup tomorrow. That will be fun because let's figure out that puzzle. But in the meantime, let me know what you think about this whole situation. I think my overall point would be that it was overall just unnecessary to have an international break on top of it all. Yeah, I get it. Players need to gel or chemistry or whatever, but you know, given the schedule, it's just very unnecessary and it's hurtful to the players. It is not conducive to playing and seeing and watching better football. And on top of that, I think it's just yet another form of greed. And the question really is, when will it end? When will people actually regard the health of players? And yeah, with that, I'm signing off for today. As always, thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.